two men with identical faces live completely different lives. The man in the black suit is Bong-san, an abandoned child from an orphanage. Growing up with little education, Bong-san could only make a living in the impoverished Dongdaemun market. Because Bong-san had no other relatives, he had been close to Mr. Seo for many years. Bong-san considered this man like his own father. Yet today, Bong-san had to heartbreakingly witness Mr. Seo's sudden death. Grief overwhelmed Bong-san and Mr. Seo's family. Seeing their family fall into ruin, Bong-san didn't know what their future held. He could only watch helplessly, secretly wishing he could do something to help them. Elsewhere, a man with a face identical to Bong-san's led a completely opposite life. His name was Jun-hee, and he was the young master of the largest corporation in South Korea. Jun-hee grew up in wealth and luxury, but he always felt a lack of freedom because he was constantly under the control of his family. After his father's death, Jun-hee returned home to hear his father's will announced by the lawyer. 80% of Sopia's shares will be divided equally between the two sons, and the remaining 20% will belong to the grandmother. The house and real estate in Seoul will belong to his wife. The real estate in Incheon will belong to his mother. The rest will be donated to charity. Finally, all the aforementioned shares and assets cannot be transferred to anyone outside the family for 5 years. Temporarily, the grandmother will take over the management of the company. This displeases the late chairman's wife, who only wants her son, Jae-min, to become chairman. However, the mother-in-law still holds a great deal of power, especially to protect her grandson, Jun-hee. Although Jun-hee has no interest in the company, he is still a danger to his stepmother that needs to be eliminated. Everything started when Bong-san visited high-end stores. Bong-san secretly took pictures of their designs and was caught by the manager. The female manager demanded that Bong-san leave the store immediately, but Bong-san kept denying any ill intentions, saying he was only there to buy clothes. While the two were arguing, an employee came over with several bags of goods. The female employee handed the items to Bong-san very warmly, as if he were a regular customer. Although Bong-san didn't know if there was a mistake, he casually accepted them. The female manager thought she had falsely accused a customer and kept apologizing to Bong-san. Bong-san calmly left with the designer bag, which contained a very expensive suit. Bong-san was extremely excited. He put it on and experienced the feeling of being rich for the first time in his life. The real owner of the suit was Jun-hee. When Jun-hee came to pick up the goods, the employee discovered the mistake. She never expected to make such a huge mistake, simply because they looked so alike. She and the senior manager were both very confused. They offered to compensate Jun-hee, but Jun-hee refused, as the suit was a one-of-a-kind limited edition. If they didn't resolve the matter satisfactorily, Jun-hee wouldn't let it go. Meanwhile, a group of people were causing trouble at the girl's shop. They claimed her father had borrowed money from them, but refused to pay it back. Just then, Bong-san returned. Seeing Yoo-jin in danger, Bong-san bravely rushed in to fight the thugs. Yoo-jin was incredibly grateful to Bong-san. She didn't know what she could do to repay him, but Bong-san didn't need her to repay him because he was someone Yoo-jin's father had helped a great deal. Now, Bong-san would accompany Yoo-jin to help her family pay off their debts. That same evening, his grandmother came to the hotel to persuade Jun-hee to return home. But for Jun-hee, that house was too suffocating, and no one there welcomed him. Moreover, now that Jun-hee knew his biological mother was still alive, he decided to go find her. Jun-hee wanted to ask his mother why she heartlessly abandoned him all those years ago. Once he got the answer, Jun-hee would return to Paris. Before that, Jae-min had come to see Jun-hee to persuade him to return to work at the company, or Jae-min would buy all of Jun-hee's shares at 10 times the market price. But in the end, Jun-hee remained unmoved. Meanwhile, Bong-san took Yoo-jin to a garment factory. The owner asked Yoo-jin to plagiarize designs from high-end brands. This was unacceptable to someone studying fashion design like Yoo-jin. Yoo-jin argued with the owner and then resolutely left. Bong-san immediately chased after Yoo-jin. He wanted her to understand that to make a living, they had to do any job. But Yoo-jin remained stubborn in her opinion. Seeing this, Bong-san had to remind Yoo-jin that the money her father had given her for her education came from this very job. If it weren't for it, Yoo-jin might not even be here arguing with Bong-san now. Although Yoo-jin couldn't deny Bong-san's words, she still wanted to try another way that didn't go against her conscience. So Yoo-jin went for an interview at Sophia Company. The recruiter, knowing that Yoo-jin had studied at a prestigious school in France, highly regarded her. Unfortunately, Yoo-jin had dropped out of school a long time ago, so her chances of being hired were probably very low. Meanwhile, Bong-san went to a bar to find more customers, but unfortunately, Bong-san was discovered by the leader of the gang from before. The attackers dragged Bong-san outside to beat him up. Bong-san, of course, refused to be beaten and fought back. Seeing the situation was unfavorable, Bong-san quickly fled. At this moment, Jun-hee, who looked exactly like Bong-san, appeared. The leader mistook Jun-hee for Bong-san and beat him up. Meanwhile, Bong-san was still trapped, surrounded by his henchmen. While fleeing, Bong-san was cornered and unexpectedly encountered Jun-hee. The two looked at each other in astonishment. The leader was equally surprised by the scene before him, but he had to teach them a lesson. Bong-san quickly reacted, trying to find a way to escape. As he went outside to get his car, he saw Jun-hee running towards it. Bong-san waved, signaling Jun-hee to get in, and so the two successfully escaped from the thugs. This was also the first time they had met someone who looked exactly like them. Bong-san was extremely delighted. Bong-san immediately suspected they were long-lost twins. Meanwhile, Jun-hee was in a very bad mood. Suddenly, Jun-hee was caught up in a fight. Not only that, Bong-san was wearing Jun-hee's suit. Jun-hee thought Bong-san was using his resemblance to him to deceive others. Jun-hee muttered a few words of complaint in French, then got out of the car and called someone to pick him up. This made Bong-san misunderstand that Jun-hee was cursing him. Bong-san angrily punched Jun-hee. Seeing Jun-hee lying on the ground in pain, Bong Bong-san thought he was faking it. At this point, Bong-san took off all his clothes, returned them to Junhee, and then got back in the car and drove away. From now on, Bong-san no longer owes anything to the other party. Meanwhile, Junhee was suffering alone with the pain in his chest. Fortunately, the housekeeper arrived in time and quickly took Junhee to the hospital. Junhee had previously undergone heart valve surgery, but his heart function had deteriorated. Even a new valve transplant would be useless. Therefore, the best option was a heart transplant. However, Junhee had a rare blood type, making it very difficult to find a match. Even his older brother wasn't related to him by blood. Because he was adopted, Junhee couldn't find anyone else suitable unless he found his biological mother. Meanwhile, Yujin was facing financial difficulties due to her mother's hospital bills. Her father's ledgers showed many people who had borrowed money from him and hadn't repaid it. Yujin took the ledgers to demand repayment, but they all refused. Since her father had passed away, there were no witnesses. Therefore, Yujin couldn't do anything. Even when she tried to talk to them, she was pelted with salt and verbally abused. Yujin could only leave in frustration, unable to do anything. A woman saw Yujin wandering on the street and called her over to ask what was wrong. If those people still stubbornly refused to pay, Yujin would have no other choice. The woman then suggested a way for Yujin to start a business. If successful, Yujin could earn money to pay for her hospital bills. After that, the woman called Bong-san to help Yujin. Upon hearing this, Bong-san panicked and chased after Yujin, because the place Yujin went to was the territory of the thugs. Sure enough, as soon as Yujin set up her stall to sell, she encountered the thugs. They were the same people who had vandalized Yujin's shop the day before. One of them began to ask Yujin why she dared to sell there without asking his permission. Yujin said that she hadn't done anything illegal, but these thugs certainly wouldn't let it go so easily. Luckily, before anything serious happened, Bong-san arrived in time to pack up Yujin's belongings and pull her away. If Yujin had stubbornly stayed to argue with the thugs, she would only have suffered more. Afterwards, Bong-san found a better place for Yujin to set up her stall. Thanks to Bong-san's enthusiasm, many customers flocked to the stall. Yujin was also captivated by Bong-san's humor, always smiling. At this time, Junhee also received news about the place where his mother used to work. It was a restaurant in Dongdaemun Market, and the owner was also his mother's hometown. Junhee hoped to have the chance to see his mother again, but when Junhee went there, the owner heartbreakingly informed him that his mother had passed away a long time ago. The owner even claimed that the late chairman's current wife was the one who had harmed Junhee's mother. The owner herself had buried Junhee's mother on Jeju-do Beach. Upon hearing this, Junhee's chest ached intensely. The shock was so great that he had to be rushed to the hospital. His health deteriorated rapidly, and the doctor advised him to return to Paris immediately to see the doctor who had treated him. Junhee knew his body couldn't endure much longer, but he stubbornly refused to heed the butler's advice. He wanted to stay in Korea to investigate his mother's death, and tomorrow he would go to work at the company as his grandmother wished. The butler immediately objected, insisting that Junhee go abroad for surgery as soon as possible. At that moment, Junhee noticed Bong-san's business card in his vest pocket. An idea suddenly struck him. Meanwhile, Bong-san had just received a large order. He happily rushed off to deliver the goods to the client. But when he saw Junhee, Bong-san's smile quickly vanished. Bong-san wondered what Junhee's intentions were in summoning him. Junhee's purpose was clear. He wanted Bong-san to swap identities with him for a period of time. If Bong-san did well, the reward would surely be substantial. While Bong-san was still hesitating, trouble arose again with Yujin. Two people had come to inspect Yujin's shop that day, as they were the new owners. It turned out that because Yujin couldn't repay her debt on time, the thug had put it up for sale. Upon knowing this, Bong-san immediately confronted the thug to reason with him, but the thug wouldn't give them any more time. If Yujin couldn't pay 50 million won, including principal and interest, she would have to vacate the shop. If that were true, she would permanently lose the shop her deceased father had left behind. Unable to bear the thought of the shop being stolen, Bong-san rushed to the hotel that very night to find Junhee. Bong-san accepted the offer to swap identities for one day in exchange for money to pay off his debts. Sure enough, Junhee gave Bong-san an envelope of money. According to the agreement, Bong-san would replace Junhee to meet the French client. However, Bong-san didn't know any foreign languages, so he had to remain completely silent while the interpreter worked. Fearing the interpreter would suspect him, Bong-san suggested Junhee find someone he knew to act as an interpreter. Bong-san explained that Yujin had studied in France and was fluent in foreign languages. Furthermore, Bong-san wanted to help Yujin earn money, so he demanded an additional 5 million won from Junhee for the interpretation. After Bong-san transformed into the young master of a large corporation, he was greeted with bows wherever he went. He was even chauffeured around in a luxurious car. The comfortable and soft seat was an extremely pleasant experience for Bong-san. Bong-san quickly called Yujin as planned, but he didn't reveal to her that he was impersonating Junhee. The two of them worked together to guide the clients on a tour of the market. The two clients were extremely satisfied and left happily. Bong-san considered his mission complete. He took out his phone to call Junhee to claim his reward. Suddenly, a group of people appeared out of nowhere and forced Bong-san into a car before he could react. At the hospital, Bong-san knew that the chairman had arranged for him to have a health checkup. Because he was in Junhee's identity, he was unintentionally required to undergo a health checkup. The results showed his health was better than expected, much to the chairman's delight. His French partners had also called the chairman earlier to praise Bong-san. Therefore, she now has even higher expectations for her grandson and wants to hand over the company to him as his successor. These words reached the ears of the madam. The butler was bewildered, not understanding what had happened. When he went to find Junhee, he knew that Junhee had found a replacement. Thanks to this, this, Junhee had deceived the grandmother. Bong-san completed his mission excellently and received a well-deserved reward. Now, all Bong-san needed to do was bring the money to the creditor, and Yoo-jin could get the shop back. But when they arrived, the creditor was nowhere to be found. Bong-san and Yoo-jin searched all the bars, but still couldn't find him. If they waited until the end of tonight, the shop would belong to someone else. Thinking about not being able to keep her father's shop made Yoo-jin very depressed. Seeing her so pessimistic, Bong-san tried to cheer her up. Even if they fail now, they can start over. They just need to save money and open another store, and Yoo-jin can continue selling her father's goods. The next day, the two of them packed up their belongings to leave the store. Yoo-jin was very reluctant, but she couldn't do anything else now. It was also time for Bong-san to return the suit to Junhee. Looking at the luxurious suit, Bong-san felt a little regretful. So, Bong-san wore it one last time to the shopping mall. Bong-san entered the store where he had caused trouble before. He told the staff to bring out all the clothes for him to try on, but in the end, he didn't take anything and returned everything. The female manager didn't even recognize Bong-san until he took off his glasses. At this point, she could do nothing but let him leave. Bong-san was pleased that he had gotten his revenge for the previous incident, but as he drove away, he almost hit someone. The girl in the car got out and argued with Bong-san, but she suddenly stopped when she saw him. Seon immediately remembered that earlier at the bar, she had almost been hit by Bong-san's car, but at that time, Bong-san was hiding from thugs and didn't have time to apologize. This time, Seon wouldn't let it go so easily. She reminded him of everything to make Bong-san apologize, but Bong-san mistook Seon for an employee at the bar. Bong-san could only promise to compensate her next time before quickly leaving. Seon couldn't forget the face of the person who had caused her accident, yet she saw that same face again when she went to Junhee's house, so she mistakenly thought Junhee was Bong-san. Meanwhile, Yoo-jin brought her resume to the fashion store to apply for a job. That store belonged to Jae-min's family company. Jae-min immediately recognized Yoo-jin as the person who had interviewed at the company the day before. At that time, Yoo-jin boasted about studying at SMOR in France. Even though she hadn't actually graduated, Jae-min had a rather negative impression of Yoo-jin, even suspecting she was sent by a rival company. In fact, they had met in Paris, where Jae-min had forgotten his passport and Yoo-jin returned it. However, Jae-min basically didn't remember this. Meanwhile, Bong-san happened to see the creditor and followed him to his office. She thought she would get her shop back, but instead, she was threatened by him. He held a promissory note from Bong-san to Yoo-jin's father. It turned out that Yoo-jin's father had helped Bong-san borrow money, so the debtor was actually Bong-san, not Yoo-jin's father. The creditor gave Bong-san 4 days to pay, otherwise Yoo-jin would find out everything. Junhee returned to her mother's hometown to investigate the cause of her death. Here, Junhee met an old woman who knew his mother. He knew that before his mother's death, a strange woman had come to see her. Junhee took out a family photo and asked the old woman if she recognized anyone in it. However, due to her age, the old woman couldn't remember. She only knew that Junhee's mother had asked that woman about a boy. Perhaps this woman had taken Junhee away from his mother and caused her to become so distraught that she died. Therefore, Junhee had to find out the truth. Within the next week, Junhee would go abroad for surgery. Once he recovered, he would return and take revenge on those who had harmed his mother. Meanwhile, Jae-min dropped his travel guidebook in Paris. Jae-min recalled meeting Yoo-jin and receiving her help, but he had forgotten about it and even thought Yoo-jin had lied to get a job at the company. Now, Jae-min felt extremely guilty for misunderstanding Yoo-jin. Bong-san, meanwhile, was tormented by the fact that he owed Yoo-jin's family a debt that had caused them so much hardship. At this time, Bong-san and Yoo-jin's family were visiting her father's grave. Yoo-jin's mother, visibly moved, held Bong-san's hand and called him their benefactor. This only intensified Bong-san's guilt, but he didn't dare tell the truth. Bong-san could only silently help Yoo-jin and her mother to make amends. The company was busy preparing for the launch of its new brand and needed to recruit more interns, so they chose Yoo-jin. After all, Yoo-jin had studied at SMOR and won an award, so she was certainly very capable. Soon after, Yoo-jin received good news from the company. Yoo-jin happily thanked them and promised to come to work the next day. That evening, the housekeeper, following Junhee's orders, went to Bong-san's house. It turned out that Junhee wanted to hire Bong-san to impersonate him again, and this time the reward was double the previous amount. Bong-san had no reason to agree this time. To get rid of him, Bong-san demanded 100 million won. If Junhee really wanted to buy his life, 100 million won wouldn't be a lot. But even so, it was a considerable sum. Junhee had to think hard to make a decision. Junhee really needed someone to impersonate him so he could go abroad for surgery. But if Junhee suddenly pulled out 100 million won, the chairman would become suspicious. After a long night, Junhee still decided to give Bong-san 100 million won. That price was still too cheap compared to finding out the truth about Junhee's mother's death. However, Bong-san still refused until Junhee pleaded with him. Junhee said that it was his last wish before leaving this world. Bong-san could sense Junhee's sincerity and urgency, so he finally agreed. The next day, the butler personally brought the money to Bong-san. To ensure Bong-san completed the task and didn't abandon it halfway, the butler made Bong-san sign a promissory note. So Bong-san immediately took the entire sum to the creditor to exchange for his promissory note. When the creditor saw 100 million won in cash, he couldn't believe it. He wondered how a poor person like Bong-san could earn such a large sum of money in just a few days. In any case, Bong-san finally settled all his debts. No one would bother Bong-san or Yoo-jin anymore. Yoo-jin was about to start working at a design company, so Bong-san told Yoo-jin that if she needed workspace, she could borrow his house. In return, Yoo-jin designed some clothes for him so he could open a shop. That evening, Seon deliberately went to the bar they had been to before to find Bong-san. And sure enough, Seon met Bong-san. Even now, Seon still thought Bong-san was Jun-hee, so she kept asking him if he remembered her. They used to play together when they were children. To avoid being exposed, Bong-san didn't deny being Jun-hee. He even told Seon to keep his clothing business in bars a secret. Before Bong-san officially became the young master of a large corporation, he had to undergo training under the supervision of a butler. Bong-san had to learn everything from how to eat to how to walk. In this way, Bong-san, from an uneducated boy from a poor market area, became the young master of the upper class. Next, Bong-san needed to memorize the faces of each family member. Before the housekeeper could finish speaking, Bong-san received a call from Seon. There was an upcoming fashion show, but Seon didn't want to attend alone. Therefore, she wanted Jun-hee to accompany her. Bong-san hadn't yet knew proper etiquette, so he tried to refuse. However, Seon threatened to reveal to her family that Bong-san worked at a bar. So, Bong-san had to obediently comply with Seon's request. Furthermore, the chairman couldn't attend the show today, so she sent Jae-min in her place. Jae-min needed staff to accompany her, but everyone in the design department was busy. At this time, only Yoo-jin, a new employee, was free, so she was nominated by the team leader. On the way to the show, Jae-min took the opportunity to apologize to Yoo-jin for what happened the day before. Now that Jae-min remembered everything, the two reconciled. They agreed to put aside past misunderstandings. Upon their arrival, they unexpectedly encountered Seon. Jae-min was surprised to hear that his younger brother was also participating, as Jun-hee had never liked attending events before. Bong-san had initially only planned to attend briefly and then leave, but unexpectedly, he met Yoo-jin there. Bong-san panicked and quickly looked for a hiding place before sneaking away. However, he was discovered by Seon. Fortunately, Yoo-jin was in the hall at the time, so Bong-san wasn't exposed. Although Jae-min noticed his brother acting a little strangely today, he didn't suspect anything. Meanwhile, the housekeeper and Jun-hee at home were extremely worried. They feared Jae-min would discover that Bong-san was just an imposter, so Jun-hee had to go there immediately. Jun-hee told the housekeeper to call Bong-san, but Bong-san didn't answer. Currently, Bong-san and Seon are in the auditorium watching a fashion show. This is also Bong-san's first time attending such a large-scale event, so he is extremely excited. Before he could fully enjoy the feeling, Bong-san was startled to find Yoo-jin nearby. Bong-san quickly lowered his head to avoid being seen by Yoo-jin. Bong-san used the excuse of a relapse of his old illness to sneak out. Jun-hee arrived and encountered Yoo-jin. Yoo-jin mistook Jun-hee for Bong-san and pulled him along. Jun-hee was confused and didn't know how to explain, but he couldn't reveal that he wasn't Bong-san. Finally, Jun-hee was dragged by Yoo-jin to her roadside stall. As usual, Bong-san's job was to dance to attract customers, but a young master like Jun-hee would never do such things. Jun-hee had to use the excuse of needing to go to the restroom to buy time. Upon hearing Jun-hee's voicemail, Bong-san immediately rushed over. While waiting for Bong-san, Jun-hee hid in a corner, silently observing Yoo-jin. Seeing Yoo-jin's efforts, Jun-hee gave money to a man to buy some goods to support Yoo-jin. A short while later, Bong-san finally arrived. Yoo-jin saw Bong-san, breathless and wearing different clothes, and immediately wondered where he had been. To avoid arousing her suspicion, Bong-san lied, saying that a colleague had given him the clothes. Thanks to Bong-san's support, Yoo-jin's business was booming every day. At the company, Yoo-jin also had the opportunity to showcase her talent. During Seon's presentation, the company invited a designer. Yoo-jin was the only one who dared to express an opinion contrary to Seon's. This caused the team leader to quickly signal Yoo-jin to be quiet. However, Jae-min wanted to hear what Yoo-jin had to say. Yoo-jin said that to create a brand identity, they shouldn't chase current trends. Instead, they should create something different to establish their brand in the hearts of customers. Jae-min strongly supported this idea, so the design work was assigned to Yoo-jin's team. This unintentionally annoyed Seon. Meanwhile, the butler went to Bong-san's house to directly remind Bong-san to be more careful from now on. Bong-san shouldn't let an incident like yesterday happen again. Because Bong-san was curious by nature, he tried to ask more questions. Through this, Bong-san knew that Jun-hee and Jae-min were competing for the inheritance. If Bong-san made a mistake, Jun-hee would be the one to suffer. Before the company's anniversary celebration, Jae-min indeed visited his younger brother to gauge the situation. Jae-min wanted to see Jun-hee's attitude towards the company because tomorrow, their grandmother would surely introduce Jun-hee to the shareholders. Jun-hee simply said that he hadn't made a concrete decision yet. After the anniversary celebration was over, Jun-hee would take a month off to consider whether he should stay in Korea or go to Paris. After Jae-min left, Jun-hee immediately packed his bags to prepare for his trip to Paris for surgery. Bong-san would impersonate Jun-hee at the anniversary celebration. It was Bong-san's first time meeting the chairman, so he was a little nervous. Therefore, Bong-san instinctively joked around, causing the housekeeper great anxiety. The housekeeper intentionally reminded him, but Bong-san still couldn't take it seriously. His grandmother wanted to call a doctor in case her grandson's illness relapsed. However, Bong-san said that he was still very healthy and that his grandmother was the one who needed to see a doctor. Bong-san even pinched the chairman's face and told her to pay attention to her teeth. All of this greatly annoyed the chairman. The housekeeper hurriedly pulled Bong-san outside to reprimand him. If Bong-san continued with those strange actions, they would surely be exposed. Then the chairman took the podium to open the anniversary celebration. At the same time, she introduced her two grandsons who would be taking over the company with her. The chairman showed particular favoritism towards Jun-hee, as he had lived in France for many years, so very few shareholders knew him. The chairman told her grandson to go up to the podium to speak and greet everyone, but Bong-san loudly shouted 1, 2, 3 into the microphone to see if it was working. Everyone laughed at this. Despite this, Bong-san's speech received much support from everyone. Shareholders vied with each other to exchange business cards and get acquainted with Bong-san. They all focused their attention attention on Bong-san, and no one paid any attention to Jae-min. Jae-min sadly took his bottle of wine outside and found a corner to drink. Yoo-jin found Jae-min sitting alone. She guessed he was upset, so she stayed by his side. She also reminisced about their good times in Paris, thinking it would cheer him up. Unexpectedly, Jae-min suddenly became irritable. He was no longer the carefree person she thought he was. He had so many things to worry about that he felt constantly stressed. At the same time, Yoo-jin's mother discovered that her husband's shop had been transferred to Bong-san. She was extremely puzzled and thought of the only person who might know. She then went to this friend to ask about the situation. Finally, she knew the truth, but when she returned home, she didn't tell Yoo-jin anything. Meanwhile, Jae-min couldn't stand his grandmother's discriminatory treatment, so this time he wanted to directly ask the chairman to let him and Junhee compete fairly. If in the end she still chose Junhee, Jae-min wouldn't complain. The madam, wanting to consolidate her son's power, proposed a marriage between Se-eun and her son. Se-eun was the daughter of the largest investment fund group in Korea. The two families had been quite close for a long time, so this proposal wasn't surprising. However, Se-eun had no feelings for Jae-min, so she politely refused the madam. Early in the morning, Bong-san was awakened by a knock on the door. Bong-san opened it and saw Yoo-jin's mother. She had come today to clarify why the shop was transferred to Bong-san. Bong-san then produced the transfer document, written by her husband, and the other document was a promissory note Bong-san had written to Mr. Seo. Bong-san would pay a small amount to Mr. Seo each month. Unexpectedly, Mr. Seo passed away suddenly. Bong-san honestly had no intention of hiding this. Fortunately, Yoo-jin's mother understood and sympathized with Bong-san. Her only wish was to continue working at that shop. Of course, this couldn't be told to Yoo-jin to avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings. Soon after, Yoo-jin called and asked Bong-san to take her to the fabric shops in the market. Bong-san was familiar with the area, so only he could find the fabric Yoo-jin needed. At this time, the chairman was urging the housekeeper to quickly bring Junhee to the company for an apprenticeship. Since Junhee's mother had passed away, Junhee didn't need to rest for a month. Now, taking the opportunity to learn at the company would be better for Junhee. Because Junhee was currently in France, the housekeeper was in a difficult position. The housekeeper was very worried about letting Bong-san go to the company, but since Junhee couldn't return yet, the housekeeper reluctantly asked Bong-san to go to the company. Tomorrow was Bong-san's store opening day, and he didn't want to miss the opportunity. So Bong-san came up with an idea. He asked the housekeeper to lend him a car. At first, the housekeeper didn't understand why Bong-san needed the car. Then, the housekeeper saw Bong-san finish a can of beer he had just bought from the store and drive away. Bong-san then slammed on the gas pedal and crashed into the car in front, causing an accident. After the incident, his grandmother immediately had someone work with the media to prevent the news from leaking out. Moreover, Bong-san was spared from going to the company for a while. Thus, Bong-san was able to open his store as planned. That day, everything went very smoothly. Customers supported Bong-san's store a lot. Bong-san and her mother, Yoo-jin, hadn't been this busy in a long time. Just then, Se-eun called. Se-eun wanted Bong-san to take her to see the fabric shops in the market. Bong-san repeatedly refused, saying she was busy with customers. Se-eun then threatened her with her secret, forcing Bong-san to comply. The two wandered around, but eventually had to return to the shop because it was late and all the fabric shops were closed. Taking advantage of her free time, Se-eun enthusiastically helped Bong-san with the customers, but Bong-san complained that she was a nuisance. Bong-san just wanted to send Se-eun away. At that moment, Bong-san saw Yoo-jin and Jae-min walking towards them. Bong-san panicked and quickly pulled Se-eun to hide in a corner. Yoo-jin wanted to introduce Jae-min to Bong-san because Bong-san was familiar with the fabric shops in the market. Unfortunately, at that moment, Jae-min had food spilled all over him, staining his clothes. Yoo-jin quickly took Jae-min to the restroom to change. Even after washing, Jae-min still smelled bad. Anyone passing by would cover their noses, so Yoo-jin personally went to buy him a new set of clothes. Meanwhile, Se-eun and Bong-san arrived at the restaurant. There, Bong-san unexpectedly encountered the same gang from before. They started mocking Bong-san and making comments about Se-eun's appearance. Se-eun immediately stood up and smashed a tray over the leader's head. She also scolded him, leaving him speechless. Because of this, the leader, Ji-san, was very impressed with this strong-willed girl. He even chased after Bong-san to ask her name. After a long day, Jae-min personally drove Yoo-jin home. In the car, they had the opportunity to share many stories. Their circumstances were quite similar. Because they had both lost their fathers, they easily empathized with each other, and feelings gradually developed between them. Bong-san, however, couldn't sleep all night. He couldn't bear the thought of Yoo-jin being with Jae-min at this hour. Early in the morning, Bong-san rushed to Yoo-jin's house and asked if anything had happened between them the night before. Yoo-jin insisted that their relationship was just normal. Hearing this, Bong-san felt relieved. While Junhee was recovering from the accident, the chairman instructed Jae-min to take advantage of this time to mentor Junhee in her work. This way, when Junhee returned, the two could compete fairly. Immediately afterward, the chairman ordered the butler to go and pick up Junhee. On the way, the butler constantly reminded Bong-san to absolutely obey his grandmother and not to act disrespectfully like before. Sitting in front of the chairman, Bong-san's legs trembled uncontrollably. His grandmother was surprised, but she simply thought her grandson was too nervous. Moreover, the reason his grandmother had called Bong-san was to tell him to learn from Jae-min. Whether he wanted to or not, Bong-san absolutely could not disobey his grandmother. At the company, Jae-min noticed that Yoo-jin was always being bossed around by other colleagues, so he deliberately asked her to accompany him to the factory. Yoo-jin obediently followed the director's instructions. Yet, as soon as they reached the parking lot, Jae-min told Yoo-jin she could leave. He only wanted to rescue her from those people and give her more time to go home and design. This was the first time Yoo-jin had seen Jaemin treat her so kindly, and she was extremely grateful. She took a gift from her handbag to give him, and also wanted to apologize for soiling his clothes yesterday. Afterwards, Yoo-jin went to Bong-san's house, but he wasn't there. She had no choice but to go up to the rooftop to wait for him to return. It had been a long time since the shop opened, and Yoo-jin hadn't visited Bong-san's shop yet, so she really wanted to go there today. As soon as Bong-san heard this, he called Yoo-jin's mother to remind her to come home. Yoo-jin was completely unaware that her mother was working there. The next day, Bong-san began following his grandmother's instructions. He went with Jaemin to learn. Every morning, Bong-san had to go to the gym to exercise. After that, Bong-san had to attend boring meetings. Throughout the day, Bong-san would just doze off and couldn't come up with any ideas. Jaemin was extremely disappointed and frustrated with his younger brother. As a result, the butler angrily complained incessantly about Bong-san. Bong-san lacked even the most basic knowledge, while Junhee was perfect in every way. The butler worried that Bong-san wouldn't be able to impersonate Junhee. Bong-san was also very upset. He said that although they looked like twins, their childhood circumstances were very different. Making a living was already difficult for Bong-san, let alone the opportunity to study abroad. As soon as he finished speaking, Bong-san angrily stormed off, ignoring the butler. But the butler pondered Bong-san's words. He recalled hearing another child crying in the house before he took Junhee away. On his way, Bong-san encountered the same gang of thugs again. For some reason, Bong-san and they seemed to have a connection. After talking for a while, they discovered they had once lived together in the same orphanage. Overjoyed, they went out for drinks to reminisce about old times. Despite meeting so many times, they only now realized they were childhood friends. If Ji-san had known this beforehand, he wouldn't have made things difficult for Bong-san. Ji-san could even have lent Bong-san money to buy another shop, but Bong-san only liked Yoo-jin's father's shop. Yoo-jin was helping her mother bring fabric to Se-eun for her design. Yet, when the two were together, Se-eun only talked about Jaemin's younger brother. Seeing Se-eun becoming increasingly infatuated with Junhee, Jaemin couldn't help but feel jealous of his brother. Jaemin felt that Junhee was always favored by everyone, while Jaemin, no matter how hard he tried, was never cared for or acknowledged. Because he was so frustrated, Jaemin didn't go home that night, but went straight to the company. Jaemin wanted to bury himself in work to forget everything. Coincidentally, Jaemin met Yoo-jin in the company lobby. Yoo-jin knew Jaemin was upset, so she specially took him to a place that could lift his spirits. The fountain would spray water at the right time, and the two of them would play there until they were completely soaked. Whenever Jaemin was sad, Yoo-jin was always by his side, so gradually he paid more attention to her. A female colleague, jealous of Yoo-jin's talent, framed her. She lied, saying the company had run out of sample fabric, forcing Yoo-jin to rush out to buy some. When Jaemin found out, he angrily reprimanded her and warned that he wouldn't let it go easily. Yoo-jin was busy searching for the right fabric for her design. She pleaded with the owner, but she wouldn't sell it to her. Only when the owner knew that Yoo-jin was a friend of Bong-san did she make an exception and help Yoo-jin once. Only a few hours remained until the deadline for submitting the product sample to her superiors for approval. Yoo-jin had to work so hard to meet the deadline that she dozed off without realizing it. Bong-san returned home and saw this. He wanted to touch her lovely face, but she suddenly woke up. Afraid of being questioned, Bong-san quickly changed the subject. Afterwards, he and Yoo-jin went for a walk and breathed in the fresh air. They talked about their future dreams. Yoo-jin wished to create her own brand so that someone would recognize her. Bong-san, upon hearing this, fantasized that the person Yoo-jin was referring to was him, so he chose that moment to express his feelings to her. Bong-san eagerly awaited Yoo-jin's answer, but she naively thought that Bong-san was just joking with her. Recently, Yoo-jin has been so focused on her work that she forgot her promise to design for Bong-san's shop. That's why Bong-san deliberately acted that way to remind Yoo-jin. Just thinking about Yoo-jin makes Bong-san incredibly angry. Suddenly, a customer arrives. This is the owner of a large, potentially lucrative bar. He wants designer items for his female employees, but Bong-san's shop doesn't have what he needs. The man is about to leave when Bong-san rushes out to stop him. Bong-san can't let this VIP customer slip away. Bong-san promises that he will bring high-quality goods for the customer to see the next day. Bong-san also assures the bar owner that he won't disappoint him. So, the next day, Bong-san dresses elegantly and goes to meet the bar owner. Bong-san shows his business card from Sophia to demonstrate his wealth and his ability to guarantee the quality of his goods. The bar owner went to make a phone call to verify if he was Junhee from Sophia. Meanwhile, the company was holding a meeting to select a design for their strategic product. Initially, everyone chose Se-eun's design, making her very happy. Yoo-jin, however, was very disappointed that she wasn't chosen. Jaemin noticed Yoo-jin's expression. He really wanted to choose Yoo-jin's design because it was more creative, but doing so would make people think Jaemin was being biased. At the last minute, a famous designer saw the potential in Yoo-jin's dress design and chose it for the campaign. This made Yoo-jin extremely happy. However, a problem arose. Yesterday, Yoo-jin showed the owner the sketched design from Bong-san's shop. Therefore, the shop owner thought it was a product Bong-san was about to launch, so she gave the design to Bong-san. Bong-san also thought it was a product designed for his shop, so he immediately took it to the factory to have it made. Bong-san also wanted to keep it a secret from Yoo-jin to surprise her. Just as Bong-san left, another shop owner arrived. Seeing the design, she was very interested. At this time, Ji-san brought a gift to congratulate Bong-san on the opening of his shop. The two of them joked around. Just then, Yoo-jin saw them. She wondered why Bong-san was so close to this thug. Bong-san pulled Yoo-jin aside to explain. At this point, only Ji-san was left in the shop. Ji-san accidentally found Junhee's business card in Bong-san's jacket pocket. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, Yoo-jin knew that the two of them had lived together in the same orphanage, but she still reminded Bong-san not to get too close to that kind of person. Furthermore, Yoo-jin also wanted to let Bong-san know that her product had been selected. If the launch was successful tomorrow, Yoo-jin would become a permanent employee. Bong-san also had a surprise for Yoo-jin. Bong-san also told Yoo-jin to come to his store tomorrow. The next day, as Bong-san was preparing to go to the store to launch the design, the butler unexpectedly appeared. Because today was also the company's new product launch day, Bong-san had to attend. However, Yoo-jin was also there. If Yoo-jin saw him, Bong-san would be exposed, so he didn't know how to handle it. Meanwhile, it was almost time for the show, but Yoo-jin's model hadn't arrived yet. The team leader said they could temporarily find an amateur model to replace her, but Yoo-jin was still uneasy. She would be the one to showcase her outfit. Just minutes before the performance, the company suddenly received bad news. Yoo-jin's exclusive design was being sold everywhere online, causing widespread outrage. They questioned whether Yoo-jin was copying or leaking the design. Yoo-jin was the most shocked of all. She couldn't understand how such an absurd thing could happen, but it was too late. The strategic product had been replaced by Seon's design. Therefore, Yoo-jin was no longer eligible to perform. Everyone left in disappointment, leaving only Yoo-jin standing there dejected. Bong-san and the butler appeared at the company, looking like thieves. Bong-san was completely covered from head to toe to avoid being recognized, but when Bong-san entered the hall, he couldn't find Yoo-jin anywhere. Bong-san also felt very strange. However, this reassured him, allowing him to pretend to be Jun-hee until the performance ended. Through Sun's words, Bong-san knew that Yoo-jin's design had been leaked. Bong-san seemed to understand something and hurried away. But at that moment, Yoo-jin found out who had copied her design and was selling it online. The other party blamed everything on Bong-san. Yoo-jin immediately went to Bong-san's shop and saw her mother displaying the dress. She couldn't believe she had been betrayed by Bong-san like this. Bong-san wanted to explain to Yoo-jin that it was all a misunderstanding, but Yoo-jin was no longer in the mood to listen. She slapped him and left. This time, it was all Bong-san's fault. If Yoo-jin didn't forgive him, he would blame himself for the rest of his life. The very next morning, Bong-san went to Yoo-jin's house. As soon as he saw Yoo-jin come out, he quickly knelt down and apologized to her. He explained that he had mistakenly thought it was the design she had created for her shop, but someone else posted it online. Yoo-jin didn't take Bong-san's apology seriously. She even asked why Bong-san was so easily swayed by others, and that it was because Bong-san lacked self-respect that he stole her design. Bong-san immediately stood up and said that he wasn't like she said. But things were irreparable now. Even if Bong-san didn't do it intentionally, Yoo-jin had to take responsibility to the company. After that, Yoo-jin was officially fired, and she no longer had a chance to rectify her mistake. Jae-min couldn't protect Yoo-jin either, as this was a company matter. Jae-min wanted to confirm if he had feelings for Yoo-jin, so he gently placed his hand on her shoulder and prepared to kiss her. At that moment, Bong-san arrived to ask Yoo-jin for forgiveness. If the other two became a couple, Bong-san would have no chance left. Bong-san hastily snatched the glasses from the sleeping man and rushed towards Jae-min. He quickly separated the two of them and hugged Jae-min tightly, turning his back to Yoo-jin so she wouldn't see his face. Then, Bong-san pretended to have a heart attack, causing everyone to panic. Jae-min quickly called an ambulance. On the way, Jae-min told the staff to quickly contact the hospital so they could prepare. Because Jun-hee had a heart condition and Bong-san feared being exposed, he disappeared before anyone noticed. Bong-san's priority now was to get Yoo-jin to forgive him. Bong-san had gathered all the dress samples that the other woman had copied. He wanted Yoo-jin to burn them herself so she could vent her anger. If Yoo-jin didn't have the courage, Bong-san could do it for her. Seeing Bong-san pouring gasoline on the pile of dresses, she burst into tears, begging him to stop. After all, these were Yoo-jin's cherished possessions, and she couldn't bear to see them destroyed. Afterward, they gave away all the dresses for free. As long as people happily accepted them, that was the greatest comfort for her. The matter with Yoo-jin seemed settled. However, Bong-san sneaking out of the hospital angered Jae-min. The butler had to drag Bong-san back and wait for Jae-min to reprimand him. Now, Bong-san had to find a plausible reason to avoid arousing Yoo-jin's suspicion. Bong-san said he had a very important appointment and had to leave immediately, but this reason didn't sound convincing. However, seeing that Bong-san's health was still stable, Jae-min didn't want to pursue the matter further. Jae-min only hoped that he and Yoo-jin could understand each other's feelings. This was the first time Jae-min had experienced the feeling of being deeply in love with someone and wanted to make amends. However, Yoo-jin felt their circumstances were too different. She didn't want people to think her success was due to Jae-min. After quitting her job at the company, Yoo-jin tried to switch to another field, but when she saw customers photographing her designs, her love for fashion resurfaced. Yoo-jin ultimately chose to return to the fashion industry and decided to become a designer for Bong-san's shop. The two supported each other a lot in their work and became increasingly close. Meanwhile, Seon secretly liked Bong-san. Seon invited Bong-san to her shop to sew clothes so she could have more opportunities to be close to him. Coincidentally, Mr. Choi visited the shop that day and talked about his charity work. Bong-san also wanted to help the children at the orphanage, so he and Seon took clothes from the company's warehouse and brought them to the orphanage as a donation. When the children heard that a donor had arrived, they all rushed out. Throughout the day, the children clung to Seon and Bong-san, making things quite difficult for them. But in return, they felt very happy for having done a good deed. Seon wanted to take this opportunity to express her feelings, but unfortunately, Bong-san couldn't reciprocate. Bong-san told Seon that he wasn't Jun-hee and that he didn't deserve her affection. The person Seon loved was the young heir of a leading Korean corporation, not him. At this time, news of Bong-san's charity work at the orphanage had made the news, and of course, reached the chairman. Everyone was tense, thinking she would be angry. However, the chairman happily praised her grandson for doing a good job, considering it compensation for the car accident he caused earlier. That day, Bong-san hadn't returned yet, but he received an order from a customer. So Yoo-jin took Bong-san's place to bring clothes to the bar. But the other party insisted that Yoo-jin try on the revealing dress before he would accept the goods. Not wanting to affect the business, Yoo-jin tried on the dress. Unexpectedly, someone mistook her for a prostitute and tried to grope her. Yoo-jin panicked and pushed him away to run. Unfortunately, she ran into Jae-min right outside the bar. Seeing Yoo-jin in that state, it was hard not to misunderstand. Jae-min immediately pulled Yoo-jin into the car to avoid attracting attention. Once they were in a secluded place, he asked her what had happened. Yoo-jin recounted the whole story to Jae-min, but no matter what, Jae-min still didn't want her to frequent places like that. Therefore, he offered to introduce her to another company, but she adamantly refused his help. Even Yoo-jin never listened to Jae-min's opinions, even though they came from his sincere heart. So Jae-min told Yoo-jin about his situation. Although outwardly, Jae-min was admired by many, he had always been under pressure from his father and grandmother since childhood. So, this was the only time Jae-min hoped Yoo-jin could understand him. Later, his mother discovered that among the assets registered under Junhee's name was a shop called Little Master in Dongdaemun Market. She found it strange and told Jae-min to investigate. She wondered why a young master like Junhee would buy a shop in a common market. To verify, Jae-min went there himself to investigate. And before Jae-min's eyes was his younger brother skillfully greeting customers, as if Junhee had been doing this job for a long time. Of course, Jae-min had no idea that the person standing before him was Bong-san, a man with a face identical to Junhee's. Now, Jae-min desperately wanted to hear his younger brother's explanation for secretly opening a shop here. Bong-san lied, saying he wanted to explore the market and learn about business. But this time, Jae-min wouldn't let Bong-san off so easily. He had previously heard his brother say he had no interest in business, yet now he was secretly opening a shop. Therefore, Jae-min became even more determined to compete for the inheritance with his brother. Trouble began to mount when Seon encountered Yoo-jin at Bong-san's shop. Both were surprised by each other's appearance. Bong-san, in each of his identities, had connections to them, but the other remained unaware. Just as Bong-san returned, he immediately found himself in an awkward situation. Before Seon could reveal that Bong-san was the heir to the Sophia Group, he quickly covered her mouth and pulled her away. At this time, the Sophia Group was planning to demolish Dongdaemun Market to build a shopping mall. Jae-min was in charge of this project, so he wanted to speed things up. He began having his subordinates gradually buy up all the shops in the market. Since Yoo-jin also worked there, Jae-min wanted her to quit and become his designer. But Yoo-jin resolutely refused, even hoping that Jae-min would stop pursuing her. Seeing Yoo-jin leave so decisively, Jae-min was extremely annoyed. He immediately stood up and chased after her to try and stop her. Seon, who was nearby, accidentally discovered their relationship. Seon then thought Yoo-jin was a philanderer, simultaneously flirting with both the older and younger brothers of the same family. When Jae-min heard Seon say that, he didn't understand what she meant. Seon then revealed that Yoo-jin was working at Bong-san's shop and that they were very close. Hearing this, Jae-min's anger flared up again, but he still had to go there to confirm it. And sure enough, Jae-min saw the scene exactly as Seon had described. His jealousy only fueled his determination to defeat his younger brother. Meanwhile, Jae-min's manager came to see Ji-san to ask him to help buy up the stalls at Dongdaemun Market. The manager specifically instructed Ji-san to keep an eye on the shop called Little Master. Hearing this, Ji-san curiously asked what his friend had gotten himself into. Unexpectedly, the manager said it was the shop of the young master of the Sophia Group. Such an absurd situation was unbelievable to Ji-san. He wondered how Bong-san, an orphan, could be the chairman's nephew. Junhee was also about to return to Korea. The housekeeper informed Bong-san of this news. Bong-san only needed to endure one more day, and everything would be over. The agreement between them would expire, and the shop would officially belong to Bong-san. At this time, Yoo-jin also sold her first dress design. The buyer was none other than the chairman disguised as a customer. The chairman saw the potential in Yoo-jin's products, and even placed a large order. Both Bong-san and Yoo-jin were lucky that day, so they celebrated that evening. Bong-san asked Yoo-jin to come see him the next night, because he had a surprise for her. The next day, Bong-san brought back what he had borrowed from Junhee's house. It seemed Bong-san could finally return to being himself. Suddenly, the butler appeared, looking terrified. The butler led Bong-san to see Junhee. Instead of returning to his healthy state, Junhee was now weakly confined to a wheelchair. Although the surgery was successful, his body hadn't accepted the new heart, and his health was deteriorating. Junhee wasn't sure how much longer he could live. It had been hoped that after the surgery, Junhee would return to a healthy body and start a new life. But unexpectedly, his life had become even more hopeless. Not only was the butler heartbroken, but Bong-san couldn't control her emotions either. Bong-san wanted to know Junhee's last wish. No matter how difficult it was, Bong-san would try her best to fulfill it. Junhee didn't have any grand requests. He simply took out a photograph of a woman and asked Bong-san if he knew her. Although his memories were hazy, Bong-san could still recognize the woman. She often appeared in his dreams, and she was the woman he used to call mother. At that moment, Junhee burst into tears, saying that she was their mother, that they were both her children. Junhee only managed to say those words before passing away, right before Bong-san's eyes. Bong-san hadn't even had a chance to reunite with his family before Junhee left this world forever. The funeral was then held secretly because Junhee wanted Bong-san to replace him as the young master of the Sophia Group. But if he followed his brother's wishes, Bong-san would never be able to return to his true identity. For the rest of his life, Bong-san would only be able to live under someone else's identity. The butler earnestly begged begged Bong San to agree to Junhee's last request, but in the end, Bong San couldn't do it, and he even missed his date with Yoo Jin. When Bong San returned to the shop, he heard that Yoo Jin had moved back to her old house. Furthermore, Jae-min had bought that house for Yoo Jin. Bong San was still in shock that so much had changed in just one day. He ran to find Yoo Jin to ask for clarification, but at that moment, he saw Jae-min hugging Yoo Jin tightly. Jae-min begged Yoo Jin to stay with him because he was so lonely. Although Yoo Jin resisted a little, in the end, she couldn't give up on Jae-min. Witnessing this, Bong San almost lost all hope. Once, Bong San had asked Yoo Jin if she had been moved by Jae-min's generosity. At that time, Yoo Jin refused to answer, which only strengthened Bong San's suspicions. If Yoo Jin was materialistic, then Bong San would have abandoned his impoverished status to become the young master of a leading Korean conglomerate. When Yoo Jin arrived at the hotel, she was surprised to find Jae-min there. Even more unbelievable was that Bong San appeared in a completely different guise. Bong San introduced himself as Junhee, the young master of the Sophia group. Yoo Jin was confused, not understanding what Bong San was saying. Bong San, however, confidently introduced himself as Jae-min's younger brother. Yoo Jin thought she had misheard, but seeing Jae-min's expression, she confirmed it. Wanting confirmation, Yoo Jin went back to ask acquaintances at the market. But aside from the fact that Bong San was an orphan, no one had any other information about him. Yoo Jin wanted Bong San to confirm it himself. And just like before, Bong San said he was the young master of the Sophia group. Bong San hadn't told Yoo Jin about it for his own reasons. Now, Bong San only wants to reveal his true identity to pursue Yoo Jin fairly, because otherwise, he won't be able to compete with Jae-min. But now, Yoo Jin only feels hurt by Bong San's deception. They shared so many beautiful memories thanks to their equal backgrounds, yet now Bong San seems like someone far beyond her reach. The chairman is currently showing Mr. Choi Yoo Jin's design. From the choice of fabric to every detail of the dress, Mr. Choi praised it profusely. Both acknowledge Yoo Jin as a rare talent, so the chairman wants Mr. Choi to meet with Yoo Jin. At the same time, the company will soon launch a sportswear collection. This is a rather important project, so the chairman has decided to entrust it to his nephew, Junhee. However, Bong San lacked experience in this area, so he wanted to find a designer to assist him. The person he thought of was Se-in. Professionally, Se-in had the most experience. Meanwhile, Yoo Jin had met Professor Choi. Only now did Yoo Jin realize that the old woman she had met the other day was actually the chairman. This was a great opportunity for Yoo Jin. The chairman wanted to invite Yoo Jin to work as a designer for her company, but first, she wanted to test Yoo Jin's abilities. Therefore, the chairman wanted to send Yoo Jin to help with Bong San's project. Bong San and Se-in were still wondering who Jae-min would bring with him later. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Bong San excitedly went to open the door. Bong San was surprised to see Yoo Jin with Jae-min. Bong San wondered if Jae-min had intentionally done this to him, but Jae-min immediately said that it was his grandmother's order. Since it was a work matter, they didn't want to argue. Everyone started discussing to come up with ideas. Bong San and Yoo Jin worked very well together, which made both Se-in and Yoo Jin jealous. Se-in thought that if the two continued to be so close, she feared that both she and Jae-min would have difficulty keeping their loved ones. Then Jae-min reminded Yoo Jin that Bong San was now the heir to the Sophia group. He was no longer the boy who sold clothes with Yoo Jin on the street every day. Therefore, Yoo Jin needed to understand the difference in their status so that she wouldn't harbor too many illusions. Moreover, the madam had also known about the complicated relationship between the four of them. She didn't want Jae-min to continue associating with Yoo Jin anymore. Meanwhile, Jae-min had to find a way to marry Se-eun to take over the corporation. But this time, Jae-min defied his mother's wishes to choose the woman he loved. Jae-min wanted both Yoo Jin to seize the corporation from his younger brother. Bong San had repeatedly visited Yoo Jin's house to try and win her back. He abandoned his past to become a wealthy young master, all because he wanted to love her in a way he deserved. However, Yoo Jin still refused to forgive Bong San for deceiving her. To her, Bong San's concealment of his identity was a sign of disrespect. Meanwhile, the butler wanted to verify Bong San's identity, so he sought out the woman who had delivered the young master's mother. She personally confirmed that the late madam had given birth to twins. That alone was enough to dispel all of the butler's doubts. Now he would treat Bong San as his master and willingly serve him unconditionally. The butler hoped Bong San could live out Junhee's unfinished life. The butler also showed Bong San the letter Junhee wrote before his death. In it, Junhee recounted how he had checked their blood types and verified that they were siblings. Now, the butler had only one request for Bong San to fulfill Junhee's last wish. Bong San still couldn't accept what was happening. He desperately wanted to know where his mother was and whether she was still alive. The butler said that after he took Bong San to the care center, their mother had passed away from heart disease, which had been inherited by Junhee. Knowing this heartbreaking story, Bong San could no longer remain indifferent. He decided to fulfill his brother's last wish. From that day on, Bong San no longer considered returning to his original identity. He officially joined the company and was assigned to the design department. Jae-min would be assisting Bong San, and he had prepared many company documents for Bong San to review. Yoo Jin then had the opportunity to meet the president directly. The president entrusted Yoo Jin with the responsibility of creating a new brand. Seeing the president's support for Yoo Jin, Jae-min was even happier for her, as the president had always been very demanding. Afterwards, the two went to see the showroom displaying the designs they had just launched. Coincidentally, they ran into Bong San and Se-eun there. The atmosphere immediately became awkward. Yoo Jin was still not used to Bong San's new image. She had asked many people in the market, but they only knew Bong San from the past 3 years. Jae-min found this very confusing. His younger brother had only recently returned to the country, so he couldn't have been selling at the market for 3 years. It was just a fleeting thought, so Jae-min didn't investigate further. Of course, Jae-min Jae-min didn't know that the younger brother he saw every day was an imposter. Se-yoon was no different from Jae-min. Se-yoon had suggested that Bong-san cooperate with her to exploit the Paris market, but Bong-san had no expertise whatsoever, so he could only find reasons to refuse. The chairman was also very concerned about Bong-san's studies, but according to reports, Bong-san wasn't very serious about them. Therefore, the chairman assigned the two nephews the task of planning the acquisition of stalls in Dongdaemun market without conflict. Because Bong-san already had connections, all the shop owners readily helped him, especially the woman Bong-san was closest to in the market, who revealed many secrets to him. Before Bong-san finished his work, Ji-san came and dragged him away. Ji-san said he didn't want to do this job anymore. He planned to open his own shop and asked Bong-san to join him. He said that if Bong-san sold all her shares and they ran away together, they would become rich. Bong-san immediately objected. This was a crazy idea that only a thug could come up with. Because of their busy work schedules, Bong-san and Yujin rarely saw each other. Today, since it was on his way, Bong-san stopped by the shop to see how Yujin was doing. Upon arriving, Bong-san found Yujin distracted. Yujin didn't even hear customers calling, causing them to leave in frustration. Bong-san wanted to help Yujin, but he didn't know what to say. Just as Bong-san was about to leave silently, an acquaintance recognized him. Hearing the call, Yujin also noticed. So the two went to the place where they had once shared their dreams, but now their social standing is so different that they can no longer talk as freely as before. Yujin, though heartbroken, has to say cold words to make Bong-san give up hope. Bong-san, on the other hand, is even more determined to develop Dongdaemun market. Upon returning home, Bong-san rushes to complete the market development plan that her grandmother entrusted to her. Meanwhile, Jae-min, wanting support from Se-eun's family, convinces her to cooperate with him on this project. In return, Se-eun wants Jae-min to send Yujin abroad to study. Se-eun just wants Yujin to leave her Bong-san as quickly as possible. Just as Se-eun goes out, she unexpectedly runs into Ji-san. Ji-san tries to flirt with Se-eun, but she flatly rejects him. Unexpectedly, Ji-san didn't stop. Instead, he tightened his grip on Se-eun's hand. Luckily, Jae-min appeared in time and rescued Se-eun. Ji-san, however, was chased by security guards. While fleeing, Ji-san dropped many documents related to Bong-san. Jae-min became suspicious of this person named Bong-san. Clearly, the shop was registered under Bong-san's name instead of Jun-hee's. Therefore, Jae-min assigned his subordinates to investigate the matter. Now, it was time for Bong-san and Jae-min to present their plan to the chairman. This would be a crucial moment to decide who would become the heir, but the investigation results were already in. Bong-san and Jun-hee were two completely different people. Someone like Bong-san, who had been taken to an orphanage since birth, couldn't possibly be Jae-min's younger brother. To be even more certain, Jae-min sought out Ji-san to verify the information. On the day of the chairman's birthday celebration, everyone happily enjoyed the lively atmosphere. At the same time, Bong-san's plan was approved by the chairman. Jae-min chose that moment to expose the imposter's true face. Jae-min showed everyone Bong-san's resume to prove his point. Bong-san and the butler immediately became extremely tense. At that moment, Jae-min lifted Bong-san's shirt to check. If Bong-san didn't have the heart surgery scar, it could be confirmed that this was an imposter, but Bong-san did have that scar on his chest. Yujin immediately looked confused. The grandmother immediately called the two into a private room to scold them. At the same time, the grandmother also wanted to know why Jae-min insisted that his younger brother was being impersonated. In fact, even Jae-min was very flustered at this moment. Just as Jae-min didn't know how to explain, the butler spoke up. The butler told the chairman that Jun-hee had opened a shop in Dongdaemun market, but the young master was using the alias Bong-san. This led to a misunderstanding with Jae-min. The chairman was convinced by this explanation and didn't question further. For the chairman, the matter ended there. But for Jae-min, it was different. He was certain the person standing before him was an imposter. So Jae-min asked Ji-san to help him investigate further. Initially, Ji-san hesitated, fearing it would affect her friend, but Jae-min assured her that he wouldn't harm Bong-san because the person he wanted to find was Jun-hee. Hearing this, Ji-san agreed to help. At this time, the Sophia Corporation began posting notices for a talent search competition for designers. The winner would have the opportunity to study in Paris. Of course, Jae-min wanted Yujin to participate, so he tried to persuade her. The madam also met Yujin for the first time at Mr. Choi's place. Yujin was the woman her son often mentioned, so she wanted to find out about Yujin's family background, but the results only disappointed her. Yujin's family was bankrupt and heavily in debt. When Yujin returned to the market, she heard that a gang of thugs had recently bought up many shops in the area, even seizing assets to force people to sell their businesses. Yujin knew the gang leader was a friend of Bong-san, so she asked Bong-san to intervene so that the people could still make a living. Therefore, Bong-san went directly to find Ji-san. Bong-san had no idea that Ji-san was working for his brother. Ji-san and his henchmen seized the opportunity to lift Bong-san's shirt to examine the scar. Ji-san even asked Bong-san where the scar came from. Bong-san, without suspicion, said that the scar was from being beaten up in high school. After discussing it with her mother, Yujin decided to participate in the design competition. Yujin needs to find a way to improve her family's finances and pay off Jaemin's debts. At the same time, Yujin won't need to see Bong-san as often anymore. However, Jaemin has secretly ordered his subordinates to buy up the shops under Jun-hee's name. He also spreads rumors that foreign brands are entering Dongdaemun, thus jeopardizing Bong-san's plan to create her own brand. The madam wants to sow discord between Se-eun and Bong-san, so she deliberately reveals to Se-eun that Bong-san is the illegitimate child of the late chairman. She thinks that knowing this will deter Se-eun from supporting Bong-san. Unexpectedly, this only makes Se-eun love and cherish Bong-san even more. When Se-eun recounts this to Bong-san, he is deeply moved. Se-eun also registers for a design competition. Bong-san wants to help Seon find fabric for her clothes, but they visit many stalls without finding a suitable fabric. So they search through piles of old clothes to sort through the fabric. By then, Ji-san's investigation had yielded results. Junhee had returned to the country a long time ago, but didn't enter through Seoul. Instead, he entered Jeju Island. Furthermore, Junhee wasn't using his own name, but Bong-san's. Jaemin even called the hospital where Junhee had been treated to inquire about his brother's condition. From there, Jaemin heard the shocking news that his brother had passed away long ago. Yet, both the housekeeper and Bong-san had concealed this. This made Jaemin extremely angry. Meanwhile, Yujin's mother also asked Bong-san to stop seeing her daughter. Although she knew the two had feelings for each other, their family backgrounds were too different. The mother feared her daughter would suffer, so she hoped Bong-san would be the one to proactively give up on Yujin. Since Yujin's mother had already said so, Bong-san couldn't go against her wishes. Bong-san returned to the shop that he had entrusted Yujin and her mother with, looking after for some time. But this time, Bong-san didn't come to work. He came to tell Yujin that he would close the shop permanently and never return. He also wanted to erase all memories of Yujin. To prevent Jaemin from further suspicion, Bong-san asked the housekeeper to use his name on Junhee's death certificate. But Bong-san didn't know that his secret had already been revealed long ago. At this point, Yujin knew that her mother had asked Bong-san to avoid her. However, she couldn't control her feelings for him anymore. Whether he was Junhee or Bong-san didn't matter. She only wanted to be by his side. But just as she was about to meet him, she ran into Seon. Taking advantage of the situation, Seon revealed that both families were preparing for her and Bong-san's engagement, so she hoped that Yujin would no longer bother her future husband. Bong-san now only wanted to obediently follow his grandmother's arrangements. Only when Bong-san agreed to marry the daughter of the chairman of the credit corporation would the chairman feel secure in handing over the company to him. Moreover, his relationship with Seon was very good. If he got engaged to Seon, Bong-san promised to take good care of her. Jaemin knew that Yujin and Bong-san were completely over, so he humbled himself and begged Yujin to accept his feelings once more. But no matter what, Yujin couldn't be with someone she didn't love. Jaemin had been rejected by Yujin so many times because of Bong-san, so Jaemin hated Bong-san even more. Jaemin was determined to make Bong-san lose everything. The fashion design competition had reached the semi-finals, and the judges were about to give a challenge. Contestants would draw lots to find their partners to overcome this challenge. Yujin drew the number 5. While searching for someone with the same number, she saw Seon. They once again had a chance to work together, seizing this opportunity to clear up misunderstandings from their time studying in Paris. Suddenly, an angry man stormed into the company looking for Bong-san, demanding compensation for allegedly selling him substandard goods. Jaemin immediately reported this to the chairman. Jaemin also stated that Bong-san had used his status as the heir to the corporation to conduct business with the other party, damaging the company's reputation. At the same time, people in the market knew that Bong-san was buying up their shops, and even hired thugs to pressure them. Now the people at the market are furious. However, in reality, Jaemin orchestrated all of this. Bong-san received a call from his grandmother and rushed home. Before Bong-san could even understand what had happened, his grandmother angrily threw his resume onto the table. She questioned who had used Bong-san's name to fly to Paris for surgery while he was pretending to be a vendor at the market. The butler, realizing the secret could no longer be concealed, knelt down and confessed everything to the chairman. The butler said that Bong-san was actually just someone hired by young master Junhee to impersonate him, and that Junhee had gone to Paris for surgery. If that were the case, his grandmother wanted to see Junhee even more because she heard that her grandson had returned to the country a long time ago. The grandmother was very puzzled as to why her grandson hadn't come to see her yet. The housekeeper didn't dare tell the truth. Jaemin then took the housekeeper's place and revealed the truth. Junhee had passed away. Upon hearing this news, the grandmother was so shocked that she collapsed. Everyone rushed her to the hospital for emergency treatment. Although she was out of danger, she still needed further monitoring at the hospital. Therefore, Jaemin would take over all company matters. Jaemin wanted Bong-san to go to prison to pay for his fraud, but the housekeeper begged Jaemin to spare Bong-san because Bong-san was Junhee's twin brother and the chairman's nephew. Jaemin knew this but pretended not to know anything. Afterwards, Jaemin secretly ordered his subordinates to shift all the blame onto Bong-san, especially when the people at Dongdaemun Market wanted to sue. Hearing that the chairman had been hospitalized, Seon met with Jaemin to inquire about the situation. Unexpectedly, Seon heard directly from Jaemin that the Junhee she knew was just an imposter, an uneducated market vendor hired to impersonate him. At this moment, Seon remembered Bong-san saying he wasn't Junhee, and she had thought he was just saying that to reject her feelings. Although she knew he had deceived her, she still wanted to find him to clarify things. But when she arrived at the store, Seon only met Yujin. Finally, Seon asked Yujin to pass on a message to Bong-san if she happened to see him. After saying this, Seon left. Yujin was bewildered, not understanding what had happened. Now she couldn't even reach Bong-san. Yujin became even more confused, so she went to see Jaemin to find out why. From there, Yujin knew the entire plan of Bong-san's impersonation. Although shocked by what she had just heard, Yujin still believed that the Bong-san she knew wasn't the kind of person who would deceive for money. Therefore, Yujin tried returning to Bong-san's old house to see if he was there. Sure enough, she found Bong-san. Yujin saw Bong-san in an extremely distressed and exhausted state. This made Yujin even more eager to know why Bong-san had impersonated someone else. Bong-san had even bought up shops in the market. Despite being wrongly accused, Bong-san couldn't bring himself to reveal the truth about his relationship with Junhee, so he only said that initially he wanted to experience a life of luxury for fun, but then he became greedy. Bong-san didn't want to be a poor man in the market anymore. He wanted fame and fortune. He thought that with just a word, he could donate to many orphanages. He believed that by becoming Junhee, he could easily obtain everything. At this point, Yujin interrupted and questioned Bong-san, asking if he had taken someone else's life because of it. Bong-san didn't know how to answer. This only deepened Yujin's misunderstanding of Bong-san. Therefore, Yujin decided to cut off all contact with Bong-san. Yujin swore that she would never see Bong-san again. The next day, Seon also came to the place. Looking at the dilapidated house before her, Seon couldn't believe that someone she once knew lived there. But seeing Bong-san walk out the door, Seon no longer had any doubts. Seon angrily questioned Bong-san, asking if he had intended to take advantage of her from the beginning. Bong-san tried to explain that he was only afraid of his identity being revealed, and that he had never had any malicious intentions towards her. But San believed it was all lies, so she ended the relationship with him. The only two women in Bong-san's life have now left him. Now Bong-san's only friend is the thug Ji-san. Ji-san never expected Jaemin to go this far. Although Jaemin initially promised not to harm Bong-san, now, even Bong-san's desire to visit his grandmother is constantly thwarted by Jaemin. Jaemin refuses to acknowledge Bong-san as his grandmother's biological grandson. If both Junhee and Bong-san are eliminated, no one will compete with Jaemin for the inheritance. However, the butler still stands by Bong-san's side. The butler secretly created opportunities for Bong-san to visit his grandmother and is determined to help him reclaim what rightfully belongs to him. But given Bong-san's current depressed state, it's highly unlikely. Therefore, the butler revealed the whole truth to Yujin. The housekeeper said that Bong-san initially agreed to impersonate Junhee, only to help Yujin reclaim the store. Later, Bong-san only wanted to fulfill his deceased brother's dying wish. Bong-san wasn't as greedy as he had claimed. At this point, Yujin realized she had misunderstood a kind-hearted person like Bong-san. Therefore, Yujin was filled with remorse. Yujin wanted to quickly meet Bong-san to apologize, but when she arrived at his house, he wasn't there. Meanwhile, Jaemin, taking advantage of the chairman's coma, conspired with his mother to seize control of the company. They consulted a lawyer to find out who had authorized Junhee to hold the shares. However, Junhee donated all of his assets to charity, except for some real estate which he left to someone outside the family. Meanwhile, Bong-san returned to the market and was surrounded by people cursing and even beating him. Yet, Bong-san remained silent, enduring their insults and attacks. Then, Yujin discovered Bong-san there and bravely rushed out to protect him. At the same time, she explained to everyone that Bong-san had been falsely accused. But they not only didn't believe her, they also thought the two were accomplices. Seeing these people touching Yujin, Bong-san couldn't tolerate it anymore. He yelled at them and took her away. Only now did the two have the opportunity to resolve their misunderstandings. Meanwhile, Swan still couldn't forget Bong-san, so she returned to his dilapidated house. As Swan was about to knock on the door, she heard laughter on the rooftop. Curious, she went upstairs and saw Bong-san and Yujin playing together. This proved they had gotten back together. Seon was furious, thinking that Bong-san had only recently broken off his engagement, yet he was already with another woman. Seon wanted to know if he had ever loved her, but Bong-san's answer deeply disappointed her. Seon vowed she wouldn't let him live in peace. Not only did Seon not want to bless their relationship, but Yujin's mother also strongly opposed it. In her eyes, Bong-san was nothing more than a shameless deceiver. If Yujin still wanted to be with Bong-san, she would threaten her daughter with her own life. The plan to create a unique brand for Dongdaemun had been cancelled by Jaemin. Instead, his plan was to build an outlet mall. Bong-san was furious when she heard that Ji-san was working for Jaemin. It was clear that Jaemin had taken advantage of his position running the company while his grandmother was in a coma to benefit himself. Furthermore, Jaemin had overheard a conversation between his mother and the housekeeper. It turned out that the woman Junhee's mother met before she died was Jaemin's mother. At that time, due to the shock, Junhee's mother had a heart attack, but Jaemin's mother coldly ignored her without calling an ambulance, resulting in Junhee's mother's death. Meanwhile, the fabric Yujin needed was suddenly bought up entirely by some company. Even if Yujin searched all over Korea, she couldn't find the fabric she needed. This competition was very important to Yujin, so she went to see Mrs. Lee, who had all kinds of fabric. However, Mrs. Lee couldn't sell the fabric to Yujin just because they knew each other. The person who secretly bought up all the fabric was Seon. Seon wanted to use this to force Bong-san back to her. Now, whether he was Junhee or Bong-san, Seon didn't care anymore. As long as he agreed to marry Seon, she could give him all the power that Junhee once had. And Yujin would also become a famous designer with Jaemin's help. If the two of them stubbornly stayed together, they would only face more trouble. Faced with this threat, Bong-san still decided to choose the woman he loved. He would rather overcome difficulties with Yujin than abandon her for another woman. As soon as he returned, Bong-san used all his connections to ask if there were any alternative fabrics, but the results still disappointed Bong-san. Bong-san had no other choice but to humble himself and beg San to return the fabric to Yujin. But now, no matter what Bong-san said, it was useless. Moreover, Yujin already knew that Seon was behind the plot to harm her, so she wouldn't let Bong-san beg Seon anymore. Yujin herself would create a different design with Bong-san. Seon no longer needed the fabric that had been bought. On the day of the competition, Bong-san asked Ji-san to take Yujin to the competition. Bong-san received news that his grandmother had just woken up, so he had to rush to the hospital. The butler told the chairman that she still had a long-lost grandson, a twin brother of Junhee. That person was none other than Bong-san. That's why the two looked so alike. Meanwhile, the competition was drawing to a close. The judges announced that the final winner was Yujin. Once again, Seon lost to Yujin, leaving her utterly humiliated. Yujin received applause from everyone because she fully deserved the result. After winning, Yoo-jin was sent to France for 2 years of study, with all expenses covered by the company. Upon her return, Yoo-jin had to become the exclusive designer for Sophia. Hearing Jae-min say this, Yoo-jin was suddenly stunned. Initially, the goal of the competition was to find a brand designer for Dongdaemun. Now, Jae-min suddenly cancelled it to serve other purposes of the company, which Yoo-jin refused to accept. This was tantamount to Yoo-jin betraying the trust of the people in the market and her father. In the end, Yoo-jin returned the prize, because creating a unique brand for Dongdaemun was her father's unfulfilled wish. Hearing this, Jae-min suddenly remembered something. A man had previously opposed Jae-min's purchase of the shops in Dongdaemun market. He was eventually driven to bankruptcy. It turned out that the person was Yoo-jin's father. While the chairman hadn't fully recovered, Jae-min organized a shareholders meeting to remove his grandmother from her position. Although Bong-san was authorized by his grandmother to participate, the percentage of votes supporting Bong-san was still lower than his brother's. Just when Jae-min thought his plan was about to succeed, Yoo-jin unexpectedly appeared. Yoo-jin was there on behalf of the housekeeper. It turned out that the housekeeper had been secretly buying shares to support Bong-san. That 3% was enough to reverse the situation. The percentage of people opposing the removal of the chairman increased, so his grandmother remained in charge of the company. Jae-min never expected to find himself in this situation. Although shocked, he didn't dare blame Yoo-jin, because he was the one who had caused Yoo-jin's family to go bankrupt and fall into debt. Once Jae-min agreed to reveal this secret, he was prepared for her to hate him for life. But Yoo-jin still chose to forgive Jae-min. Grandma didn't blame Jae-min at all. She even held her grandson's hand tightly and apologized to him for making him think she only loved Junhee. This had caused Jae-min to act out of jealousy towards his younger brother. Afterwards, the whole family visited Junhee's grave. Now they are very harmonious and no longer inherit. Bong-san will also not return to work in Sophia. Instead, he will build his own career. He decided to study abroad, and after a year, Bong-san kept his promise to return to Yoo-jin's side. Bong-san announced that he had collaborated with many clients in France and that he and Yoo-jin would create a new brand called Itaidol, which was also the name of Yoo-jin's father's former store. Now they will fulfill his unfinished dream. The drama ends here. Thank you for your interest and for watching. Goodbye and see you again.